Welcome back to the Grand Solar Minimum channel. Today is Saturday, July 11th, 2020. Thank you everyone for tuning in. Long time no see. We missed you guys a whole bunch, but we're going to go ahead and give you an update today. A couple things we want to talk about. First, let's start with our space weather. Our solar wind speeds coming in at 316.5 kilometers per second with a density of 2.3. And we are looking at a sunspot in the western limb. It is turning away from Earth and it is quickly decaying. Now this is sunspot number 12. It is AR 2766. And so far we've had a couple of days actually where we've seen some sunspots, some very minor sunspots in that same location. In fact, this is the second time that we have seen sunspots in this part of our star. Very small, very quick to take off as well. Nonetheless, it is a sunspot, and if you guys look at the sun right now, pretty quiet. No major coronal hole. We are actually going to deal with some solar winds today and tomorrow. Right now they're, well, where they should be. But we could see a coronal hole bringing in solar wind speeds as fast as the upper 400 kilometers to the mid 500 kilometers per second. KP/NC is at a 0 with a 24-hour max at 1, and the thermosphere climate index is coming in at 2.53. Also, since we're talking about the atmosphere, cosmic radiation very high, 10.4%. The record of that is 11.7, and that was set back in our last minimum. And I've said this before, just because we don't see a repeat of a record-breaking cosmic radiation in the atmosphere does not mean that this minimum was weak by any means or less impactful than the one that we had previously. But yeah, let's go over to space weather section here at the grandsolarminimum.com. All right, let's check out some. Looks like a jumbled mess here as far as our position where everybody is. You're not cool unless you're hanging out on this side of the sun, apparently. And everybody's cool right now. So keep an eye on that formation causing seismic activity as well. As you can see, we've had low activity from our star. KP indices have been hitting right around 1. 2 was the highest it's hit in the last 3 days. Really quiet stuff, folks. There is our sun, the big picture, we like to call it. And that's right. On the horizon, we could be looking at a very long period of time without sunspots. Now, we've seen them develop all of a sudden most of the time. So you really can't say this is the predictor, but we are still in solar minimum conditions. So this would not surprise me to see lack of sunspots for a long period of time. Perhaps the next 10 to 20, 30 days maybe. But it's a safe bet. We got at least 2 weeks of spotless days. Maybe. Who knows? You know how the sun is. It does what it wants. So with that being said, let's go ahead and check out some articles that we have. And guys, I don't know if you've noticed this, but it's 2:42 here on the East Coast. And it's dark in my office right now. This is ridiculous. The cloud coverage, we're dealing with Tropical Storm Faye and the off and on showers that we've seen for this. But a few minutes ago, I thought, yeah, I'll go on camera today. But the light is so bad in here, forget it. Anyway, let's take a look at some articles that I thought were interesting. Record snow and freezing temperatures hits parts of South America. Now, this is dated for July 11th. 5 feet of snow is the highest volume of snow in this city in this early of the season. And this is Mendoza City in Argentina. The Andes mountain range in Chile and Argentina have large jumps of snow in the past week. Local ski websites mentioned on July 8th that the Andes is receiving record accumulations of snow this year. But unfortunately, skiers would not be able to enjoy the snow as all Slopes are closed because of pandemic. Other skies, other ski areas such as Corleco in Chile had already registered snowfall totals of 13 feet. Yeah. Which is considered to be a huge. Now, it is winter in the South. Okay, it's winter here in South America, so I want to point that out first. But still, this is an early time to get this kind of snow for them. So winter is in full effect here in South America. Temperatures hovering right around 9.4 degrees. Exceptionally cold for this time of year, this early. More snow. Norway, and this time this is not in the southern hemisphere. This is southern Norway, enters July with a record 32 feet of snow. Now, 32 feet of snow, accumulated parts of southern Norway by July, according to the BKK Energy Company, who is conducting clearing operations to prevent flooding in the mountains. The region is currently so cold that the snow is hardly melting, but the situation could change with heavy rainfall causing rapid melting. "32 feet of snow in early July." Now, Europe, the UK, you guys got robbed this year. If you love snow, that is, you got robbed this past winter. You guys didn't really see much of a snowy winter. Not like what we saw in 2017 and 2018, parts of 19 as well. Well, here is an indicator for us. When you see the kind of snowfall that we're experiencing in South America, Argentina, Chile, and then you to a part of the country. Now, remind you guys, according to the mainstream media, the Arctic is on fire. That's not true, obviously. Reservoirs are almost full of their loss of snow and sealed channels threatening mountainous regions of southern Norway. The goal of snow removal is to prevent melting into the almost full channels. There will be melting, okay? 32 feet of snow is not supposed to fall at this time of the year, especially in southern. I thought this was going to be closer to the circle. Record-breaking temperatures as well, around 20 degrees. That was set back in 1964. Again, this is at the 6,500 level. Nonetheless, crazy summer snow. So to be fair, this year, we haven't seen a specific part of the United States that records snow, well, except for Idaho, Wyoming, Montana. That particular area, I-80 especially, has experienced some late snow. So July just started. We haven't, we still got time, right? But so far, every month, this summer, and you guys could hear the thunder in the background, I'm sure, as we are getting ready to see some severe weather. But as I was saying, we're seeing major snowfall in parts of the northern hemisphere. I don't know how to put this 32 feet thing together here, guys, honestly. Southern Norway, not northern, southern. I know Idaho had 6 to 8 inches of heavy wet snow. And it seems like we get kind of those snowfalls. That seems like a lot as well. And it is for June and July. Especially when you see the temperatures the way they are right now. So we're already seeing some colder setups in South America, in the southern hemisphere. We're getting some freak 32 feet worth of snow in Norway. And NOAA issues La Nina watch, up to 55% chance of development during fall, persisting through the winter. Now, here is a map that shows us when we're dealing with a La Nina what we will actually be looking at. And really, for people in the Northeast, it doesn't change that much. Maybe colder, a little bit snowier. They're calling for warmer weather along the East Coast, drier across the Sun Belt, drier in the Southwest, wetter in the Northwest, which they don't need that, but lots of cold coming into the northern plains, into the Great Lakes, and clipping the Northeast. That's usually a typical La Nina pattern. But I'm going to take a little bit further here. I feel like that we're going to see colder temperatures, lower solar activity is contributing to the amount of cosmic rays in the atmosphere, creating cloud nucleation, blocking sunlight from doing its job of heating up the planet and the oceans. So we're going into the end of this minimum as we start to come out of it late this year, possibly early next year. Meanwhile, La Nina will be more than alive at that point. And will next year snowfall in the U.S., will that make a comeback? Now, to be fair, there were a lot of parts of the United States that saw quite a bit of snow accumulation this year. Make no doubt about it. The typical blizzards and stuff, that lake effect snow that Buffalo usually sees, they had a pretty busy, active year. So I'm not saying we didn't get any snow. The UK and Europe, though, they're the ones that got robbed the most last winter, if you like snow. I would have thought that having last year off and having a break would have been a good thing. I had a lot of people complaining in the comments section about my prediction of winter in the UK being colder and snowier, and unfortunately, I was wrong. I want to say hi to a few people out there. It's been a while, guys. Matt Bros, Jesse, Richard, Knife Collector, I saw you in here. There you are, big guy. Jake Green, good to see you guys. A couple other members I see. Eduardo. It's good to see you guys. We've been really super busy, and we are trying to do as many of these as we can. We have a weird schedule right now, so bear with us. Fish and Magician, local over there. He is just down the road for us. Actually, guys, his channel, he's got cameras that show his property and just the area around him. He lives up in the woods and the mountains. Beautiful area up there. Just interesting camera footage if you ever just want to check it out. Fish and Magician, guys. He's all right. But anyway, back to the La Nina forecast. And I think it's important to take caution with NOAA. They've been wrong before. El Nino, just to be an example, last year, how high of a chance that they were giving this El Nino. And the conditions weren't really there for El Nino last year. Not until later. And they were very moderate. And I was complaining about it the whole time. That was my biggest complaint. Right now, we are very neutral. A 55% chance of La Nina is what NOAA's saying. Now, these are just blips. Values here are going up a little bit. They took a nosedive in late May. Started to come up over the last month or so. I do expect another dive in temperatures. Right now we're at 0.224. To be in an El Nino type situation, we're miles away from that. So just because we're approaching that 0.5 threshold doesn't mean El Nino is coming back. We saw this when we were watching this last year, the ups and downs. And yes, surely we got the Modaki El Nino. Modaki. But it also gave us some mild winter days as well. I don't think it was as cold in certain parts of this winter. It stayed cold for a while, but not as crisp as we're used to. So I'll give that one to El Nino. Every time I say El Nino, I think of the Chris Farley skit where he's El Nino. Anyway. So we were talking about snow. Powerful thunderstorms ripped through the Midwest, leaving tens of thousands without power in the U.S. This has been something of a frequent nature across the South, too, but a series of strong thunderstorms ripped through parts of the United States, including eastern Iowa, Kentucky, southern Indiana, Illinois, Nebraska, and southern Wisconsin on July 9th. Many trees and power lines were down, leaving tens of thousands without electricity, with more than 30,000 customers affected in Chicago area alone. Storms rolling through the eastern Iowa, leaving damage across the area. Branches, other debris was scattered across streets. Several trees collapsed on houses, properties, and blocked roads. The heavy rain resulted in flooding in some parts of the states. Here's a couple of videos. Again, you guys can go to watchers.news, check them out. Across Kentucky and southern Indiana, storms were reportedly hit and miss this week. According to the local media WHAS-TV, a pulse thunderstorm occurs in areas which typically develop during the summer months here in Kentucky, but unlike clusters or lines of thunderstorms that move across and impact a larger area, these are typically isolated in nature, and their impacts are very localized. Again, more of the same in southern Indiana, near Salem and Kentucky. Nebraska had heavy winds as well. Downed trees, limbs, power lines, disrupting electricity to more than 5,000 customers. In southern Wisconsin, Alliant Energy and Madison Gas and Electric both reported power outages that affected thousands of people throughout the area. The hardest hit areas included Delvin, Janesville, Sauk City, and Maine. Hope I didn't butcher that there, Wisconians. If I did, I apologize. So, severe weather all over the place. What a bizarre map, too. Let's go over to Mike's weather page here, spaghettimodels.com. Mike's a good guy. Very honest, doesn't sensationalize, doesn't overhype things. And the website, this is where I go to find out information on all of my hurricane reporting. Tropical storms, you name it. There's been quite the cluster of storms in the south. Today it's finally easing up. That's why I wanted to show you guys a local radar right now. Let's back out of this a little bit. And we are quiet in the south. And thank God, because it's been a wild week down here. For anyone that lives down here, I don't have to explain. It has been very busy, storms, flooding, you name it. Today we are dealing with a couple of showers from Tropical Storm Faye, which I think tracked further west inland. And Buffalo is getting heavy rain from this right now. Let's go ahead and put this radar into motion. Yeah, so it looks like the eye of the storm is about 2 hours from the south towns in Buffalo. And now this storm, Faye, Tropical Storm Faye, is starting to move east-northeast. So here in upstate New York, we are seeing thunderstorms popping up, but there is a serious line of thunderstorms yet to come here later today. We've experienced rain showers, downpours all day and all night, but so far nothing too crazy on the flooding. Tomorrow, we should have a better idea, or Monday when I do a report, we'll have a better idea of what kind of rain totals. But we're reporting 5 to 8 inches of rain in parts of Maryland from this storm already. So this has been a very wet, active pattern for the south and the northeast. We'll continue to monitor this as it continues. Actually, I wanted to mention, too, Faye made landfall in 24 hours after forming. This is also the 5th storm on record, earliest storm to hit this part of the country. The 5th earliest in the history. So very, very interesting that this area has been hit more than once as well. This thing made landfall near Atlantic City, New Jersey, just before 5 p.m. on Friday. The city was just a few miles from Bridgeton, New Jersey, where Superstorm Sandy made landfall in 2012. Faye had weakened as of 5 a.m. Saturday at sustained winds, slowing 35 miles an hour as it continued its path with a speed of 17 miles an hour. The center of the storm was located about 50 miles north of New York City, believe it or not. According to the National Hurricane Center, with recent downgrade in maximum wind speed, Faye has now been downgraded to a post-tropical depression. So we will expect flooding, not as bad as we got on the coast. But still, we're going to be dealing with torrential downpours, heavy rainfalls. Here's some of the rainfall totals thus far. Wynwood, Pennsylvania at 5.26 inches. Ocean City, Maryland at 5.63. The winner so far is Lewes, Delaware, which they have picked up 6.97 inches of rain so far from Faye. Now, we're not seeing that kind of rain up here in the upstate New York areas, but 1 to 3 inches of rain is expected for this particular area, and that's a lot of rain, but we need it. New York and the majority of the Northeast is in a very moderate drought. Nothing serious, but we do need the rain, so very, very thankful on that. So, remember when we were told the Arctic was on fire, we should all be terrified. It's snowing there now. That's right. I was talking about that earlier. Along with Norway getting their 32 feet of snow, here is more freak snow. July 5th, Northern Hemisphere. I just wanted to bring that up, though, because we do have to remember some of these things these AGW people say. The Arctic is on fire. That one day we got that 104-degree temperature, that record. It happens. It's called weather. Yeah. Anyway. Short, hot summer, folks. I've said it over and over. And I quickly want to go over this real quick before we go into our weather outlook. This won't take long. I'll try not to take long. The GOP climate contract paves the way for Green Deal. That's right, folks. Kevin McCarthy, several conservative politicians as well, are endorsing the American Climate Contract, a document that calls for U.S. to achieve net zero carbon emissions by 2050. Now, the reason why I wanted to bring this up today is because there's a lot of politicizing going on in the world. Before now, the idea of global warming, climate change is man-made, it seems that ideology exists in the Democratic Party. And that the people who follow that man is not responsible for climate change. We're called climate deniers, but that's not the case. For the majority of us are either libertarian or conservative. So when Trump took office in 2016, he changed a bunch of things at the EPA, rolled back some regulations, and it was a signal that this administration, this Republican Party, understood that the reason for the EPA limits in the first place was to fight climate change. So when Trump started rolling back emission regulations, to me it was a signal that he understood that man does not cause climate change. The Republican Party understood that man does not cause climate change. And then I've talked to you guys about Rick Perry, Republican, energy sector guy. He made an interesting comment about climate change and that man does have a role in it. He's not sure how much, but he does know for sure that man has a role in climate change. Republican. And that was a head scratcher. But seeing the Republicans coming up with their own version of a Green New Deal is troubling to me. And why is it troubling? because this indicates to me that there are several Republicans in this party that believe that man and carbon emissions controls the climate. Now, unless this deal is to help breathing air and drinking water. The United States can and should take efforts to continue to improve our environment, but pledging to a global and national net zero carbon zero emissions would not just wreak havoc on an already struggling economy. It would have little to no environmental benefit. That is the best sentence in this paragraph. And I know there's people out there that'll criticize me for saying that because, well, my breathing air and drinking water is way more important than your stable economy. Now, I get that. I've always said that man is responsible for breathing air quality and drinking water quality, and that we do need to be less pollutant. But on this channel studies solar cycles, natural warming and natural cooling. And like you see here in the corner of your screen with a t-shirt that says, I love CO2. Why do we sell t-shirts that say that? Because CO2 is life. Because if you educate yourself about CO2, you'll know that it is not a pollutant at all. Maybe the AGW is confused. Maybe CO2 is the only compound or element they can remember to blame. Maybe they don't know the names of the other particles that are put in the atmosphere that may cause a change in breathing air and drinking water. This is common, easy knowledge stuff. We could all look up ourselves. You don't have to go to YouTube and Google CO2. You could do this at Google. You could do this anywhere. In the science books in schools, they'll tell you that CO2 is life. And then in the same book, later in there, they'll talk about climate change and blame CO2. It's crazy. Flip-flop. So the big concern, not only does this document paves the way for Green New Deal, and you're saying, well, why does it do that? Well, because this will be the argument when they try to enforce the Green New Deal. Well, the Republicans want this too. Our ideas are a little bit more aggressive. The scary part is that the way this country operates politically. And there's a lot of worry that if Biden wins, that he's also going to win the Senate back too. Can you imagine the Senate, Congress, and presidency controlled by Democrats? And I'm not trying to start a political war. I just don't believe in the Democrats' political agenda when it comes to climate change. AOC's Green New Deal is going to get the green light, folks. And the reason why is the big argument for the Democrats now is going to be, well, the Republicans understand that man causes climate change, so why don't we take the appropriate aggressive actions to make this a matter that is no longer to be worried about? The problem with that is that both parties are wrong because carbon emissions are not causing what's going on with the climate. Mari told me that it's possible not just YouTube, but other platforms are lifting restrictions off of channels that were once censored for alternative views and alternative news. And there is a threat from the administration that could get platforms in trouble for not allowing certain topics to be discussed or promoted. I don't think the grand solar minimum is such a bad thing. This topic of research and what it is, it creates critical thinking. It gives people understanding about seismicity and climate and what our sun does to our magnetic field and our planet and the solar system. And there's just so much that gets covered with grand solar minimum. And this is stuff that is verified by scientists all over the world. This is not just some conspiracy theory, global cooling, ice age channel. This is a channel that studies solar cycles and the effects that the Earth receives from these cycles. So hopefully this channel starts getting shared more. This channel starts showing up in recommended feeds because, honestly, we need a dose of truth about the climate. Our political leaders, unfortunately, aren't capable of wrapping their heads around the real science. And that's apparent for not just grand solar minimum, but everything. And there's a bunch of stuff I could talk about, political figures not understanding science. But we don't have that kind of time. But I just wanted to bring this up, guys. We are in a weird spot. We are in a very weird spot right now. And I was hoping that during this shutdown that we had back in April and March, or March and April, I should say, I was hoping that when we saw that the CO2 emissions were less, carbon emissions were less in the atmosphere during the shutdown, but yet concentration levels of CO2 still remain 415 or higher parts per million. Temperatures actually went up during the months of no man-made emissions when we were on a full lockdown. Most of the countries were down 70% on carbon emissions. Temperatures still went up. And what was funny is that we got the UAH temperatures, they dropped from May to June, they dropped almost 0.11. And that was when we went back, when we started reopening, when carbon emissions were resuming, temperatures dropped. Somebody described grand solar minimum as like an onion. There's so many layers to peel back. You can't simply sit here and explain this to people within 5 minutes, 15 minutes, 4 hours, 10 hours. It takes a special dedication to try to understand what's happening. And look, it's trial and error. There's things on this channel that I thought I understood, and I've made wrong predictions, but we learn from those mistakes. And understand there's just so many factors out there contributing to global cooling. Solar activity, which leads to volcanoes, earthquakes, which leads to cloud nucleation, which cuts back on how much TSI is actually hitting the surface. The sun is already emitting lower TSI. So you factor all that in. And what's the science that the AGW brings you? What's the science? What do they bring you guys? Do they even give you numbers and charts, or they just keep talking about how we got 6 months to change our actions now or we're going to die? End of the world is here. No, not the case. Anyway. All right, let's go ahead and check out what the GFS is thinking. We are dealing with Tropical Storm Faye. It's now a post-tropical storm. Rain will continue off and on for the northeast. Not very heavy. I think the heaviest has already occurred. And this is Sunday, finally scooting out of the northeast. Some lingering showers in the Ohio and Tennessee valleys all the way down to New Orleans. That system will move through the Midwest and then exit out the East Coast. And then a dry day on Monday, July 13th, for most of us, actually. If there's any rain, it'll be spotty at best in southern parts of Florida. Northeast might get a sprinkle or two. And then we got a line of storms coming in from the Canadian-U.S. border to look like advancing to the Great Lakes region. Nothing major, but some heavy rain is possible with these storms on Tuesday and Wednesday. And really the Southeast getting a much needed break. They had a very, very active week last week. By Thursday, these line of storms are going to be racing towards the Ohio Valley once again, but nothing too crazy. You might see a flow of moisture coming from the Atlantic Ocean onto the East Coast. And that has a lot to do with that high pressure that's out there spinning in the middle of the Atlantic, which is pulling the moisture from the tropics and pushing it on the East Coast. Will collide with a low pressure system by Friday, July 17th. And this should be an active weekend for the Ohio Valley into the Northeast again. So we got rain up here this weekend. Next weekend, pretty much the same. There's that high pressure system peaking a little closer to the East Coast. But because of that high pressure system, it keeps pulling in more moisture from the tropics. And rain pretty much inundates the East Coast and the Northeast throughout the entire weekend. And then pretty much after this is pretty much all speculation. So we'll look and see if we have any kind of developments. Looks like more of a rainy pattern, though, for sure, as that will continue throughout the rest of July. So areas that we're looking at drought conditions on the Northeast, that will end. According to this GFS outlook, that high pressure system is pulling moisture from the tropics and bringing it on the East Coast into the Northeast. So it could get very soggy here for us on the East Coast and the Northeast, across the Great Lakes and the Ohio Valley. Some drier weather across our farm belt. Matt, enjoy. Some typical showers, but high pressure then sets in. Pretty nasty low pressure system is predicted at the end of the month of July. See what we look like temperature-wise. Very, very, very hot. Across the, and I hate to say it, the areas that are most affected by this outbreak right now are in the southern part of the United States, from North Carolina all the way to Southern California. You guys are looking at 90s and 100s. And this is the area where certain viruses were supposed to die because of the heat. Very, very hot here, folks. Starting to cool off a little bit for the Northeast because of that rain. That's not going to last very long. Across the Great Lakes as well, Ohio, Northern Ohio, Michigan. Scott Rose, what's going on, bud? Looks like you guys might have some much, much nicer air to feel, especially at night, too. Scott was talking about upper 80s and 90s for much of Michigan this week. So this 79-degree, 81-degree weather is much, much welcomed. But very, very hot across the south next week as well. Things starting to heat back up in the Ohio Valley and back into the Great Lakes area as well. Back to summer-like temperatures in the 80s, while the Northeast still recovering. And we'll finally see mid-80s by July 16th. That's Thursday. But as far as we can see, it's going to be hot, hot, hot across the south for a good while here in July. Now, the Great Lakes, Northern Plains states, not crazy hot, but that's okay. No one's complaining about 70s, mid-70s in July. But most of the East Coast, the Ohio Valley, 80s and up. Central Plains, very hot. Across Kansas, look out, Goodland, Kansas, 107 degrees. That's that dry heat, too. Same with you, Matt. Some very, very hot days ahead for the central part of the United States. Those 90s are trying to creep up further north. By the end of July, we have a chance to see 90-degree weather again up the East Coast into the Northeast. Temperatures possibly 92 degrees by the end of the month for Albany, New York. 90s also flirting with southern Ohio. And this is the part of the year where it usually is pretty darn hot for that area. Across the south, even hotter. Hot, hot, hot. What'd I say? Short, hot summer. I'm sticking with it. I'm telling you right now, I am sticking with that prediction. Short, hot summer. And we will probably see signs of a slowdown in this summer heat. Middle to late August. September might be a surprise as far as, I hope not. And I know a lot of you farmers are probably going to throw your phone at the wall at this one, but I think it's safe to say we have to be aware and be ready for a possible early frost this year. So hopefully some of you farmers learned some lessons from last year and did the shorter grow corn instead of the 102, whatever it is. I know Matt and I talked about this. A lot of farmers do 97, 99-day corn. This year, some probably did the, I'd say, 92-day in some areas. We've had a great plant. We've had a great grow so far. But like I said, now we have to worry about the rest of the summer as far as weather goes, flooding, and then, of course, when do we start seeing those cold temperatures? Does it affect the harvest of 2020? I mean, what a crazy year it's been anyway. I guess it doesn't surprise us, right? Mari, would you like to say hello? I know it's been a while since you've said hello to our fans. It's a Saturday, a rare occasion, but I see that we have a lot of people out there. Good to see everybody.
Jake, it has been a while. I won't tell everyone that you spent like an hour doing karaoke warming up your vocal cords.
You just did.
Oops. Everyone in the chat, man, it's hard being away and like coming back. I really miss everyone, and it's just, we are so close, but you're so far away, aren't we, Jake, with this house?
Yeah.
It's
well,
just like
I think we got a lot of the hard
forward.
stuff out of the way, so hopefully we can start doing a couple more shows a week. But
I think so.
You're right.
We're getting at a point. We had a little hiccup, I was telling people in the chat, with our sewer main.
Nice.
Like, what a treat to find out that doesn't work.
Yeah, right.
Wah, wah, wah. Yeah. So, you're going to do more shows next week?
I'd love to.
All
There's
right.
a lot going on, so, you know.
Eduardo was asking about the sun rising and falling in different locations that he's seeing stuff in on YouTube, and I informed people that was my specialty back in the day.
What was it called?
Those videos. Well,
sun.
Just do just look up sun analemma, and you'll see how the sun and the earth move throughout the seasons. It's all about our earth rotation and tilt, and sun analemma, that picture that pulls up in Google Images, you'll see a few of them. You'll understand why the sun does rise and set at different places at different times of the year.
Yeah, I promise you it's not the sun simulator. The bulbs blew out.
There's all kinds of like conspiracy theories and stuff, but there's actually science also that explains it. And I was talking about doing a show for WTF Sky for that kind of question stuff.
Yeah.
Fun cosmic questions. You know, I guess there's a lot of weirdness going on in YouTube. People have questions. They want to ask our opinion, what we think, Jake.
We'll have to do a live stream on
WTF Sky.
Yeah,
yes.
That'd be great. All right, well, good to see and hear from everybody today. We really appreciate you tuning in. Guys, want to support the channel, become a paid member. All you have to do is get on your PC and click on join on our YouTube channel, or go to Patreon. Become a member and get access to our call-in shows when we have them. I know it's not been very frequent lately, but there is benefits. Don't worry, we'll get to you, we promise. We appreciate all the love and the support that we do get from our subscribers. We are subscriber ran. Our t-shirt sales, you guys are awesome. I know a lot of you have picked up the I Love CO2 t-shirt. And actually, I'm going to show off real quick. I have to before I get off the air. And I'm wearing my GSM shirt today. So, folks, go get them while they're hot. Or while the sun's hot. Anyway, that's going to do it for us today, guys. Thank you again for tuning in. We hope everybody has a safe weekend. And if we have any breaking news, we will, of course, bring it to you live here on the Grand Solar Minimum channel. We'll talk soon.
Do you like this show? Give us a thumbs up. Want to support us more? Share to your favorite social media platform. Buy a t-shirt or become a Patreon. All links are in the description below.